Hello and welcome to another edition of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo here, as always, from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, your Steelers beat writers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily content from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. A reminder, the show is presented by FanDuel. Stay tuned as we'll give you some FanDuel lines on the Steelers-Lions matchup coming up 4:30 this Sunday in Detroit. But as always, this show is sponsored by Edgar, Snyder & Associates. Believe it or not, Edgar, Snyder & Associates, their competition isn't other law firms. It's the insurance companies. If you've been hurt in an accident, watch out. Insurance companies will short sell you. They will deny your claim. They will do anything they can to avoid paying you. With over 40 years of experience, Edgar, Snyder & Associates has seen every trick in the book. When you hire their law firm, they'll fight the insurance company every day to get you the money that they deserve. They're available 24/7, so you can contact them now at 1-800-94-EDGAR. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Ray, let's talk about these Steelers, and let's talk about something that you're writing about right now. I think this will probably be up later in the day or so, but the Steelers got aggressive on fourth down. Mike Tomlin got aggressive on fourth down. In fact, they were 3 for 3 on the night against the Dolphins, and it was early in the game, which is uncharacteristic of the Steelers. On the year, the Steelers are 9 out of 16 on fourth down attempts, and I believe we looked it up. I think they're 5 out of 6 when they do the tush push, and I think all 3 of them were tush pushes this past week. So
actually, one was a conversion to Kenneth Gainwell,
right?
I think on a rub route. Yeah, but
right.
the other 2 were conversions on 4th and 1. Yep.
Now, Mike Tomlin says that they were aggressive on fourth down in this game because of the Dolphins' ability to run the ball. But they've faced other really good running teams and haven't done that. What do you make out of them being aggressive at this part of the year with the fourth down?
I just think it's that time of year, and they're looking for an edge, Chris. And I think you've been in there every Thursday with me, and what inevitably comes up with Arthur Smith. He always talks about, well, we just haven't run enough plays. We're not winning the time of possession. We need more plays to get DK more touches and to get Pat Freiermuth more touches. Well, what better way to get more touches for guys if you have the ball longer? I mean, you just look at what happened in the Dolphins game. They won time of possession, 33-26, and they ran 16 more plays than the Dolphins. That's the first time this season that they've outsnapped an opponent. They ran 66. The Dolphins only ran 50. So I thought it was good for them. I kind of like the risk taking. The analytics have been there for quite some time. We know that Mike doesn't lead into the analytics a lot. But I think in this situation against the Dolphins on Monday night, it was good for them. And I think pushing it forward to this Lions game, I don't want to say Dan Campbell invented this genre of football, but he was at the forefront of it. He's gone for it on fourth down more than any other head coach in the NFL since he took over the Lions in 2021. And they're not as good this year, but I would argue they were really good in the last couple of years because of that, because they were really efficient and really good on fourth down. So maybe the Steelers found something there. We'll have to see what happens going forward. But if you did it against the Dolphins to limit their possessions, you would think, Chris, you're going to do it against the Lions, who have the number 1 offense in the NFL, number 1 in scoring, number 4 in total yards. So they're definitely a team you want to play keep away from.
Absolutely. And to your point, this year, the Lions have the 7th most fourth down attempts on the year. They have the 7th most conversions on the year. They are right now, they are trying to pull up their percentage numbers. They are middle of the pack. They're actually, what's crazy about this, the Steelers are just ahead of them now in conversion percentage. The Steelers are 56.3% on the year. The Lions are 55.6. So, I mean, granted, it gets a big boost from this past week with going 3 out of 3. But that is different because last year the Lions ranked 7th with they converted on 2/3. They went for it 33 times on fourth down. They converted 22 of them. And I'll pull up the 2023 numbers to confirm what you're saying. But I think that's going to make this an even more interesting matchup. And listen, it's as much as it's exciting to go for it on fourth down. I think a lot of people were really excited to see the Lions do it. It's interesting. In 2023, they converted 52.5% of their fourth downs, which was, again, back toward the middle part of the pack. But either way, Dan Campbell's aggressiveness is actually absolutely a staple of his coaching. And it's something that the Steelers might go head-to-head with if the Steelers decide to use it there, which is why we're going to give you a quick shout-out to FanDuel on these odds, ends, and lines. The Steelers right now are 6.5-point road underdogs against the Lions, with the Steelers money line currently at plus 270. The Lions money line at minus 335. The over/under currently sits at 51.5 points. So Steelers being 6.5-point road underdogs makes sense. Like you said, the Lions have one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in the NFL, and so playing keep away would make a lot of sense to keep the defense rested, because I anticipate the Steelers will come out. Like, they faced other really good offense. The Bills are a good offense. The Packers are a good offense. They faced talented units this year. But the problem has been, they haven't been able to stay consistent. And we've talked about it all year. They haven't been able to keep the defense off the field because they haven't possessed the football. Against the Bills, they were good early, but eventually the Bills got a couple big plays from their defense, and then the Steelers defense had to keep being out there, and they got worn down. So you're not going to have weeks every week where you can just go out and play 70 plays of defense and shut it down against the top team. So playing keep away is going to be big. And, either the Steelers are going to need to be really good at down and distance and avoiding fourth downs, or they're going to need to get into fourth downs that are manageable, like 4th and 2 and 4th and 1, and win the way they did against the Dolphins.
Yeah. And I think you were in the press conference room with me on Monday night. Someone asked Cam Heyward about only being on the field for 26 minutes. He was like, I love it. It's I mean, after what they've gone through this year, I mean, how many times have we seen them almost get doubled up in possession? If not 40 to 20, it's like over 35 minutes, 36, 37 minutes. That defense has to be on the field. There have been games this year where the defense has been on the field 20 more snaps than the offense. I mean, the numbers are crazy when you break it down over the course of the season. So it was certainly nice to see the tables turn in one game. Now I think the Steelers, they got to stack victories. They got to stack continuing to play that way, because, Chris, if you're going to be successful in the playoffs, you got to run more plays than your opposition. Time of possession, running game, run defense, those are all factors and good indicators of playoff teams. And I think if the Steelers want to be one of those teams, they got to continue to do that.
They do, and they'll also need their defense to help stop the Lions on fourth down. The Steelers rank 31st in fourth down conversions. They allow 75.8% of opposing teams' fourth downs to be converted, 25 out of 33 on the year. So that's going to be certainly a big thing. But another big thing that can help the Steelers is Aaron Rodgers and what he's done for this passing offense with the 2 new receivers they've added to the room. We'll talk about that on the other side of this break here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, let's continue this show. But first, I want to remind people that they also need to check out our sponsors, Olivian Numismatic Rarities. Olivian Numismatic Rarities. If you've got old gold or jewelry collecting dust, turn it into instant cash safely and securely at Olivian Numismatic Rarities right here in Pittsburgh, Shadyside neighborhood. Gold prices are at historic highs, and O&R pays top dollar for your unwanted gold, silver, and coins. Stop by their premier gallery at 5833 Ellsworth Avenue in Shadyside, or learn more at onrcoins.com. That's onrcoins.com. Call them today at 412-900-COIN today. We're also brought to you by Goldberg, Persky, and White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gbwlaw.com for a free consultation. Ray, let's get to talking about Aaron Rodgers here. We're going to most likely get to talk to him later today, because Wednesday is normally his day in the locker room. But it does seem like he is unlocking stuff in this Steelers offense, both with DK Metcalf and with other guys. And it's kind of interesting because all season long we were talking about, they could use the speed of Calvin Austin, the speed of Roman Wilson. Now Roman Wilson's a healthy scratch. Calvin Austin can barely get a target, but they're unlocking the passing offense anyways. DK Metcalf back-to-back games with really good numbers. I think last game he had 130-plus receiving yards. This game was 55 and a touchdown. And then, he's finding his ways to kind of hurt defenses in, with different guys. Kenneth Gainwell, 7 catches on 7 targets for 46 yards in this last game. Pat Freiermuth 3 out of 5 for 45 yards. Darnell Washington 3 out of 4 for 25, and then the touchdown pass to Valdes-Scantling, a pass here on to Adam Thielen to get to make a first and 20, a second and 13, a pass to Jonnu Smith that gets them a pop pass that's a first down on a 10-yard catch and throw and catch. There are things that Aaron Rodgers is doing, I think, to open up opportunities across the board. I think that's huge for what the Steelers are doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Roman Wilson isn't involved at all, and Calvin Austin is, I don't know, barely involved. I mean, he's kind of on the periphery now with the way that Adam Thielen and MVS outsnapped him again for the second game in a row. So, his snaps have been limited as well. And, Scantling can still run. I think we saw that on the touchdown. But I just think Aaron Rodgers likes to know that his guys are going to be on the details. And, those guys are going to do their job. And I just think that unlocks something, with DK and, with some of these other hookups. I don't know if Calvin and Roman were always off with their assignments or their spacing or, what it was. And I don't want to speculate, but, the way Aaron has talked about Adam and Marquez here, it certainly indicates that those guys have been a big help to what's happened here in the last two games.
Absolutely. Let's talk more about how the things that these guys are contributing. Now, this is something that Aaron Rodgers said for weeks, and I've talked about this before on this show. I've written about it for our Monday story this week. But Aaron Rodgers for weeks was saying, we just need to be sharper. We just need to be here. Guys need to get the releases right. They need to get the timing right. And he kept sort of saying this, but he wouldn't point the finger. He'd be like, Roman Wilson's doing great in practice. This is his best week of practice. Calvin Austin, you love that guy. But then they go and get Adam Thielen. They promote Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And then all of a sudden, the passing offense is waking up, and Rodgers saying the timing's on point, and you're seeing less snaps for Austin and Roman Wilson not even being active. And these are Aaron Rodgers doing really good things. I think, and he kind of was saying like, hey, let's get some guys in here who can run these routes. And they're not being supreme playmakers, but it's showing you the importance of when guys play to a structure. I think the way the Steelers used Adam Thielen was part of their strategy to kind of keep Minkah Fitzpatrick occupied, because Minkah Fitzpatrick liked to play that slot corner route or slot corner position. And the Dolphins are putting him there. And so while he's on Adam Thielen, it's giving more space for DK Metcalf to work against the rest of the Dolphins secondary that isn't as impressive.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's two sides to every coin, right? Like I remember the Steelers were getting ripped when they signed Thielen, I think the same day or the day after they cut Darius Slay, and it was like the Steelers got older, and this whole thing about the Steelers being an old team, and that was a big topic when they were losing because it's something that people could hammer. But as it turns out, now that they're back to winning, I think these veterans are playing a big role in that. I mean, how can you deny that? And it happens on the other side of the ball too. So, you have to be careful. I do think veterans have a role, and I think especially this time of year, and I think it's global. Look at what's happening in Indianapolis. I know the Colts didn't win that game, but they brought in a veteran to help them try to win a football game late in the season, and Phillip Rivers almost pulled it off. And I wrote a story last week about guys coming out of retirement. A couple of years ago, the Rams won the Super Bowl. Eric Weddle didn't play for them at all during the regular season. Mm-hmm. He was in his mid-30s, and they signed him just for the postseason. He started every postseason game, and he helped the Rams win a Super Bowl. So there's a time and a place for veterans. I'm all about drafting and developing. I think that's really important for the Steelers going forward. But I'm not going to deny that Adam Thielen and MVS and some of these other guys have been really big in this recent 2-game winning streak. And I think the Steelers believe in them going forward. So I think we're going to see more of the same.
I agree. I think you're going to see more of the same. I asked Mike Tomlin about the use. They increased their usage of 11 personnel this week, which is, for those who don't know, 11 personnel. It's a description of which types of players are out there. That usually means 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. Normally, the personnel types. The first number is your running backs. The second number is your tight ends, and then the number that isn't said is your wide receivers. There's always 5 playmakers on the field at any point in time. So if there's one running back, one tight end, that could only leave 3 wide receivers. So that's what that means. So they used more three wide receiver formations. And personally, I think it might be just because they believe in these guys a bit more. And Aaron Rodgers, you brought that guy in not to just hand the ball off, not to just check it down all the time. And you do want the checkdowns because it's gonna make things smoother when they're good at that. And you see that the threat that it puts into defenses, they have to pay attention to Kenneth Gainwell now. Like, Jaylen Warren, I think, was the threat that everyone acknowledged at the beginning of the season. But I think teams, if they're looking at the Steelers, they got to realize when Kenneth Gainwell's back there, he is dangerous, and you got to pay a lot of attention to him. And so if you're paying that much attention to him in space, it's going to free up. They can't pay all the attention to DK Metcalf. And, and if they're paying attention to those guys, who's watching Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington? And then that's when your Adam Thielens and your Marquez Valdes-Scantling can sneak in here and there for other shots. And this is where I think Aaron Rodgers, it's different than what they've had with Russell Wilson last year, definitely with Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett or Devlin Hodges, even late game Ben Roethlisberger. Aaron Rodgers is a guy that sees that stuff. Like, you think back to the RPO to Pat Freiermuth, where Aaron Rodgers had in the gut and he saw, Pat's over, bam, and he hits him there. It was a similar look where they did an RPO to Darnell Washington. They got them 13 yards where he kind of held the ball in Kenneth Gainwell, and all the Dolphins came up to try to stop it, and then he just flips it out wide to Darnell Washington, and he just runs the way that he runs for 13 yards. Aaron Rodgers is seeing those things, and if he and Arthur Smith are able to dive in, and Aaron Rodgers credited Arthur Smith for his play calling in this game. He said Arthur was on one. He said he was on a roll with the way he was calling things. If that's the version of the Steelers offense that we see, maybe the Steelers can possess the ball a bit more down the stretch here.
Yeah, I mean, that was good to see, and their usage of Gainwell and Warren. I think we have to credit Arthur there. I think at the beginning of the season, Chris, they drafted Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round. I think they wanted to get him in there, but those two guys have been so good for them that it's hard to argue that those guys are basically eating up all the running back snaps. Because, I mean, what did Gainwell have? 130, 140 scrimmage yards in that victory over the Dolphins?
Yeah, he had 80 yards in the ground, 46 in the air, 126 total.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason, too, that you might be seeing more 13 personnel, at least in this last game, it's because Darnell Washington was banged up. They found out late in the week that he was going to play, but I don't know that they had their typical package, the 2 tight end package that, they typically run. So we'll see with Darnell another week, good with a concussion that, that he came through. Maybe they'll go back to that. But I agree with you. I think Thielen and MVS have been really good for this offense. And I think more importantly, it's been really good for Rodgers and his timing and his rhythm. I mean, that you score 28 consecutive points, 4 touchdowns on 4 consecutive possessions for the first time in 7 years. You better not change anything. Don't go back to what you were doing. Keep doing what you were doing. And if they do, I think they're going to continue to have more success.
I agree. I think it's something that's going to be interesting to watch down the stretch here as the Steelers continue their push to win the AFC North. Ray, right now, if you look at the way that the playoffs look out, it looks kind of like the Steelers are going to need to win the AFC North. They're not completely out of the playoff picture for the wild card. They're a game back of the Texans, who sit at the 7th seed. But the Texans are playing really good football. They don't play the Texans. And both those teams have 7 wins in the conference right now. The Steelers 7-3, the Texans 7-2. So if you want to win, your best chance is to stay ahead of the Ravens and get that AFC. But even if they got the wild card round, I think you saw the impact of the home crowd when they're into it this past game against the Dolphins, and such a turnaround from that Bills game where they chanted to fire Mike Tomlin, they booed Renegade. They played Renegade in the 3rd quarter. And that place exploded. It was like a completely. It was the atmosphere that I remember just watching, like, whoa, like this looks amazing to be at. And so, the towels were out in force, and you couldn't tell that they were mad just a few weeks ago about the Bills game. And so, I think you want that as a playoff atmosphere, which is why the Steelers need to win the division. Again, they're ahead of the Ravens. They're 8-6. The Ravens are 7-7. They have the temporary tiebreaker of winning the first game against them. As Jerry pointed out in you guys' post-Tomlin video yesterday, the Steelers can make the playoffs and win the division simply by beating the Ravens. They could lose by 100 points. quoting the hat nod to Pat Narduzzi here. They can lose by 100 points to the Dolphins and the Browns each time, but if they beat the Ravens by 1 point, they will win the division and they will host a playoff game. But they also might be able to make it so that playoff game doesn't matter. If they win out and the Ravens lose just one of their next 2 games, the Week 18 game does not matter. Beat the Lions, beat the Browns, and the Ravens lose to either the Packers or the Patriots. Both of those are 2 top teams in the NFL. The Steelers don't have to. They can rest Aaron Rodgers and everybody they want to in that Week 18 game against the Ravens. Or if the Ravens lose out, if they lose both their games to the Packers and Patriots, all the Steelers have to do is to beat the Lions or the Browns, and Week 18 doesn't matter. And it's very much becoming a more real thing that it could happen. Doesn't mean it will, but it could.
And what did we talk about before the season? Like maybe the Steelers would go 9-8 or 10-7 again. But maybe this would be the year that you win a division and you do get that home playoff game, and you never know what can happen when you're playing at home. I mean, you never know what can happen when you're playing on the road. You can get on a heater. I mean, it just happens organically every single year. Look what happened to the Commanders last year. No one thought the Commanders were going to get to the NFC Championship. Okay, right? Mm-hmm. And the Commanders aren't even sniffing the playoffs this year. So it's the NFL. There are surprises every year. There's going to be a surprise this year, Chris. I mean, Kansas City Chiefs are out of it. The Patriots, no one expected them to be here. The Broncos, the Broncos were in the playoffs last year. I don't know if anyone expected them to be in contention.
12-2.
Home field advantage throughout the playoffs, right? Yeah. So, this, to me, the AFC is wide open. Those teams are playing really well, but any one of these teams can get on a run and get to an AFC championship or a Super Bowl this year. I think it's not like past years where you kind of knew Kansas City and Buffalo were going to be there. It's not like that this year. So it could be one of those special years, maybe for the Steelers, maybe for another team, but it could be one of those years where, we get a 4, 5, 6, 7 seed getting to the championship game.
Follow all of it here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where myself and Ray Fittipaldo, Jerry Dulac, Brian Batko, we're your Team Steelers beat writers, and we'll be in the facility all week long, getting you ready for Steelers and Lions this week. Again, Aaron Rodgers will talk later today, as will DK Metcalf. We'll get more sense from what the Steelers are doing to set up for this really big game, and maybe the least of the big games. But I think it's a big matchup, because if they beat the Lions, it sends shockwaves around the NFL. Like, whoa, wait a second. And I know the Lions are 8-6, just like the Steelers, but a lot of people have the Lions a lot higher up in their power rankings, so on and so forth. But that's the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo, thanks again for tuning in, whether you did on a podcasting app or on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all the daily content from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Stay tuned all week as we continue to get you ready for Steelers Lions Sunday at 4:30. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.